In this second chance at life, I choose to evade every intersection with the esteemed General Mu Hung. When he attends my cousin's coming-of-age banquet, I feign illness and confine myself to bed. When he triumphs in securing the Lantern Riddle Championship for my cousin during the Lantern Festival, I remain at home, sipping wine and admiring the moon in solitude. When he resolves to enter the family academy, I resolutely cling to the thigh of the third princess, gaining entry to the palace as a companion for her studies. I still vividly recall my past life, where Mu Hung lamented by my bedside, attributing our misfortunes to my scheming ways that usurped his destined union with my cousin. Even my only daughter accuses me of being a loud and unruly madwoman, unlike my gentle and virtuous aunt. When the invitation to my cousin's coming-of-age ceremony arrived, my hands trembled involuntarily. This piece of correspondence unmistakably signified that the heavens had granted me a second chance. I dismissed the maidservants and immersed my body into the frigid bathwater, refusing to emerge despite trembling from the cold. When the maid discovered me, her expression was one of disbelief as she implored, "Miss, why would you subject yourself to such torment in this bitter weather?" I merely cautioned her not to disclose this matter to my parents, intending to feign illness until a doctor confirmed I could not rise from bed, thus excusing myself from attending my cousin's ceremony. But isn't young Master Mu Hung also going? Have you not longed for this? In my mind, I involuntarily recalled Mu Heng's image, an elegant and handsome youth, the object of my unspoken infatuation during my adolescent years. He was the scion of the National Guardian General's estate, well-versed in both literature and martial arts, having been conferred the title of young general by the emperor at an early age. Our families were distantly related, and naturally, there was an inclination to see my daughter enter his household. In my feverish state, my body ached, and I lacked the energy to converse. After swallowing a bitter potion that left my throat sour, I grew weary of the maid's incessant chatter and replied dismissively, "I do not wish to go. There need not be a multitude of reasons. If you would spend this effort on idle talk, it would be better spent adding another quilt to my bed, for I am exceedingly cold." The maid, having been with me for many years, recognized my displeasure and hastily tended to the fire and added more blankets. I watched her close the door and then succumbed to a deep slumber. In my past life, I ultimately married Mu Hung. It was on the very day of my cousin's coming-of-age ceremony that I was pushed into the water and nearly drowned, only to be rescued by Mu Hung. In my disheveled state, he held me, and I inevitably lost my virtue in the process. Thus, our families hastily set a wedding date. On the day of our nuptials, he lifted my bridal veil and stared at me for a prolonged moment, then forced me to drink cup after cup until I was thoroughly intoxicated. The next day, the token of my purity, the blood-stained cloth, bore no trace of red, leaving me too ashamed to speak, and he offered no explanation on my behalf. My mother-in-law imposed her rules, and I became the subject of ridicule among relatives, while he returned home late and left early, treating me as if I were invisible. At that time, I was entirely unaware of how I had offended him until my cousin married and he, reeking of alcohol and with reddened eyes, forced himself upon me to consummate our marriage, revealing that he harbored affections for another. Later, when I became pregnant and suffered from severe morning sickness, he always carried a fragrance pouch that I recognized for my cousin. Mu Hung used the pretext of separating our chambers, never to return to my courtyard again. During a difficult labor, upon discovering I had given birth to a daughter, he turned and left, leaving me to endure the scorn of surrounding relatives. As his only daughter, I cherished her dearly, having long abandoned the hope of bearing him another child. Indeed, as I had anticipated, Mu Hung never shared my bed again. Under pressure from my mother-in-law, I began to take concubines, whom he favored, as they bore resemblances to my cousin. As my daughter grew and approached the age of marriage, I selected several suitable families for her consideration, hoping she might fare better than I. Yet, Mu Hung deliberately kept me away, sending me to a temple to pray for 6 months, during which time he arranged for my daughter to marry my cousin's son. By the time I learned of it, my daughter had already participated in the tea ceremony, grinning as she presented me with tea. In a fit of hysteria, I overturned the teacup, angrily demanding to know why he had insisted on betrothing our daughter to my cousin's son, as if seeking to compensate for his own regrets through her. My daughter, with tears in her eyes, accused me of being domineering, claiming that her father's actions were a result of my pressure. "Mother, do you even know how I suffered growing up? You always arrange things I despised and forced me to excel. Were it not for Brother Rung's protection and my mother-in-law's consolation, I would have perished several times over. If I were a man, I would also loathe a woman like you, and how could I share a bed with you? Your life revolves solely around me, and it is your own doing. Father can only wait until I bear a son to inherit the family legacy. My daughter looked down on me, my husband ignored me, and even my son-in-law deliberately avoided me. But what sin had I committed? I had no inkling that they had long since developed feelings for one another. I resented Mu Hung for not being forthright before our engagement, leading me into the Mu family with no understanding, and bearing the blame for tearing apart a pair of lovebirds, all while being scorned by my oblivious mother-in-law and relatives. I detested my daughter for not knowing that I had traversed the gates of death, enduring sleepless nights to nurture her, all to cultivate her into a lady of noble birth, thereby enhancing her marriage prospects, only to be met with the accusation of bringing it upon myself. I loathed that within the countless verses my husband recited, they were all infused with his deep affection for my cousin. Outsiders remained unaware of who his true love was, and I became the victim of their unfulfilled desires. Why should I, an innocent party, bear the burden of blame for a lifetime? Eventually, I could endure it no longer. Everyone claimed I was incomprehensible, hysterical, and unworthy of being a general's wife, far inferior to my cousin's grace and poise. Yet, I refused to accept it. After toiling my entire life, my beauty had faded, and I could not compare to my cousin's allure. I yearned for a divorce, but Mu Hung adamantly refused, asserting that his esteemed reputation should not be tarnished because of me. In truth, he feared that if I divorced and revealed the truth, it would tarnish my cousin's reputation. He had always protected his beloved while I remained confined within these four walls. When my daughter became pregnant and suffered severe morning sickness, she longed for the pastries I used to make. I denied her request, no longer willing to comply with her every whim as I once had. Seeing my indifference, she grew furious and hurled my most loathed words at me, each cutting deeper than the last. My heart ached, and as I collapsed before her, our eyes locked in mutual hatred. You would be better off dead. Then this house would be peaceful. I could not close my eyes in death, and I even began to regret ever giving birth to her. Awakening from a nightmare drenched in sweat, I gazed at my delicate, fair hands and touched my still smooth face, grateful to have been granted another chance at life. 3 after missing the coming-of-age ceremony, I found solace in studying at the clan academy, instinctively tuning out all news of Mu Hung. However, the maid brought me tidings that Mu Hung and my cousin would be attending the academy. In my previous life, I married early, and the only ones who continued their studies were Mu Hung and my cousin. The newly appointed teacher at the academy was a renowned scholar, a connection made through my grandfather's friendship. Upon my arrival at the academy, I discovered my desk had already been set with the 4 treasures of study, and the one who prepared them was none other than Mu Hung himself. Miss, young Master Mu Hung is truly kind. He arranged everything for you. The maid's envious voice elicited a cold laugh from me. My 4 treasures were still in the maid's bamboo basket. How could they be laid out here? Indeed. As I approached my desk, my cousin rushed over, her face filled with contrition as she said, "Sister, I wish to sit closer to the teacher. You wouldn't mind? Would you?" Of course, I did not mind. It was not her proximity to the teacher she desired, but rather that the seat behind hers was occupied by Mu Hung. Without any intention of exposing her motives, I chose a spot further away and patiently awaited the maid to arrange my belongings. When the teacher arrived and everyone prepared to sit after bowing, a sudden ouch echoed as my cousin's chair collapsed, sending her sprawling to the ground. The classmates in the academy erupted in laughter. Children are innocent, and my cousin's predicament was simply too amusing. Yet, 2 individuals did not laugh. I, who found it childish, and Mu Hung, who rushed to help her up, offering consolation. After class, my cousin, her face streaked with tears, dashed to stand before me, asking, "Sister, do you dislike me and are deliberately tormenting me?" The incident regarding the broken stool was merely a momentary lapse on my part. Typically, my movements are not as exaggerated as hers, which seemed to suggest she has nails embedded in her derriere, twisting about at the slightest provocation. Admittedly, there was a minor issue that I overlooked. Upon hearing my words, my cousin wept even more sorrowfully, and Mu Hung immediately shot me a disapproving glance. "How can you be so callous? unable to bear the sight of others' happiness. He was on the verge of branding me as uncultured. However, I am no longer the person I once was. I no longer feel the need to rush to justify myself. I calmly responded with words he often used in the past. If that's how you wish to perceive it, there's nothing I can do. He was momentarily silenced by my retort, and after a long pause, he continued, my dear brother, naturally, has a fondness for you, which extends to your surroundings. Besides, she has just begun her studies in the clan and is still behind you in many subjects. Thus, she sits closer to the teacher. Faced with my silence, he could not help but shake his head, seemingly believing that further discussion would be futile. If you are so concerned, I shall replace her desk and chair. I offered no response and simply took my maid and departed, heading to the third princess's flower viewing banquet. In my previous life, I had been entirely devoted to Mu Hung, attending a small birthday gathering at my aunt's home solely to catch a glimpse of him. Now that Mu Hung no longer occupies my every thought, my gaze has shifted to more distant aspirations. The third princess is someone with whom I share common interests. Yet I had long ago married Mu Hung and faced numerous restrictions that gradually severed our connection. While rummaging through my wardrobe to prepare a gift for the third princess, I stumbled upon a pair of shoes I had crafted for Mu Hung. I contemplated asking my maid to sell them at the tailor's on our way to the banquet, as their presence felt rather cumbersome. After wrapping them up, I made my way to the third princess's villa, where several noble ladies greeted me. In the rush, my maid mistakenly took the wrong bundle. When I handed the bundle to the third princess's maid, I was completely unaware that this blunder would lead the princess to misunderstand my intentions. As the banquet commenced, the princess unveiled the freshly nurtured chrysanthemums from the gardener, which drew enthusiastic praise and poetic compositions from the attendees. I picked up a brush and casually penned a poem, intending merely to contribute to the atmosphere, not seeking to attract attention. Yet it was at this moment that the crown prince arrived. He took notice of my poem, offering his critique and even suggesting a couple of revisions, declaring my talent to be exceptionally high. I silently accepted his praise. Such exalted individuals have never stirred any ulterior motives within me. I do not anticipate any substantial interaction with him. As long as I can befriend the third princess, I would relish the opportunity to serve as her reading companion, distancing myself from Mu Hung and his circle. I expressed my desire to be her reading companion to the princess, who readily agreed and chided me for not mentioning it sooner. Upon returning home, my maid informed me that Mu Hung had sent me a gift, which turned out to be a string of exquisite pearls. Young Master Mu Hung conveyed a message, hoping to exchange this gift for a Shoshan stone inkstone belonging to me, and he expressed a desire for my generosity. The vivid colors of the Shoshan stone are striking, and given Mu Hang's typically composed demeanor, it is unlikely this request was for his own benefit. It is most likely that my cousin had set her sights on it. I promptly refused to make the exchange. The following day, Mu Hung was waiting for me outside the school, forcibly pulling me aside. I know you harbor feelings for me, but you cannot allow your affections to breed jealousy. Yang Yang cried all night yesterday. How can you bear to take away someone else's love? I raised my eyes to meet Mu Hang's youthful visage, realizing he was aware of my affection all along. The item in question is mine. If you wish to forcibly exchange it, who is truly taking away another's love? Moreover, you may have misunderstood some matters. I do not have feelings for you. So, do not tarnish my reputation. My tone remained calm as I locked eyes with Mu Hung, ensuring he understood my sincerity. If you do not love me, then why did you always have your maid deliver gifts to me and frequently seek excuses to meet? Mu Hung was skeptical of my words, believing I was merely retreating to advance. This is a different time. When I say I do not like you, I truly mean it. The Shoshan stone inkstone is not exclusive to me. You can easily procure one elsewhere. Yet the one you possess is based on the initial sketch I personally drew, which you had the craftsman carve. My foot, which had been poised to step forward, halted, as I had forgotten about that particular incident. Driven by my admiration, I had salvaged the discarded sketch from Mu Hang's desk and used the recently purchased Shoshan stone to have the inkstone crafted. Then I shall no longer require it. I instructed my maid to procure another inkstone for me and, in front of everyone, smashed the Shoshan stone inkstone. Mu Hang's expression darkened considerably, and my cousin burst into tears. Elder sister, how can you be so petty? This is young Master Mu Hang's heartfelt effort. My possessions. When did they become the fruits of Mu Hang's labor? If they incite unwarranted feelings, they should not exist. What I shattered was not merely an inkstone, but my attitude towards others' covetousness. I would rather destroy it myself than leave it for someone else. Upon entering the classroom, I discovered that my cousin's desk and chair had been replaced with a much finer rosewood set, standing out amidst the ordinary furniture. Rosewood is sturdy, and Moo-hung truly has devoted considerable thought to this. As I contemplated this, I took my seat after bowing to the teacher, only to feel my body wobble and fall to the ground, my tailbone aching fiercely. Ha ha ha, doesn't Sister Fu Ro's tumble resemble that of a grass turtle? My 8-year-old cousin, who was friendly with Yang Yang, pointed at me in laughter, and the laughter was quelled only by the teacher's reprimand. I remained composed, silently standing up, turning to collect the remnants of the desk and chair, and noting the joints where they had been sawed apart. I presented the pieces to the teacher, articulating my thoughts, and soon enough, some in the classroom could no longer laugh. My cousin admitted to having tampered with the furniture, claiming it was merely a harmless jest. I understood that the situation was more complex than that, but since he insisted on taking the blame, the teacher would not pursue the matter further. After class, Moo-hung intercepted me to apologize on behalf of my cousin. Yang Yang is thoughtless. I have already reprimanded her. I will ensure an apology is delivered to your household. It is all the same family. To speak so humbly for my cousin, he must be wary of my potential retaliation once I uncover her involvement. My cousin had already apologized, and there was no need to extend any further apologies to me. Without a backward glance, I boarded the carriage, indifferent to Moo-hang's demeanor. That evening, the apology was indeed delivered, and my mother even inquired about the situation. Upon noticing a small bruise on my body, likely from the broken furniture, she cautioned me against making enemies in the clan school. I nodded silently, contemplating my lack of desire to continue my studies there. On my day off, the Crown Prince unexpectedly visited, meeting with my father in private before summoning me to the front hall. Your Highness, I entrust my daughter to your care. My father spoke with utmost respect, while I, having just arrived, was unsure of the reasoning and hurriedly bowed. As I lowered my head, I caught sight of the pattern on the Crown Prince's shoes, which were unmistakably embroidered by me. The shoes I had intended for the tailor shop had somehow found their way onto the Crown Prince's feet. I suppressed my rising anxiety. The Crown Prince had already arranged for a carriage, and we sat in it one after the other. Your craftsmanship is quite impressive. I find it quite to my liking. Perhaps the carriage's atmosphere was too somber, prompting the Crown Prince to speak first. My heart raced, and I struggled to suppress my panic, feeling my ears flush with warmth. I am glad you like it. But those shoes were not meant for the Crown Prince. How could they fit him so perfectly? Inside the carriage, an extended silence ensued, and I was taken to the palace's school. To serve as the princess's reading companion, I needed to take an entrance exam. The Crown Prince encouraged me to relax, and as I removed myself from his sight, I felt a sense of ease wash over me. Armed with the knowledge amassed across 2 lifetimes, I navigated the entrance exam with ease. However, when faced with the Crown Prince once more, my nerves returned. He stood beneath the wintersweet tree, clad in a deep blue robe that accentuated his tall stature. Our third sister is waiting for us. Let us go. The Crown Prince led the way, with me following behind. Upon meeting the third princess, she greeted me with a playful smile, teasing that she had brought me a gift. Yet when I unwrapped the bundle, I found it filled with men's items, leaving me puzzled for quite some time. Within the bundle, alongside the pair of shoes, lay the small items I had originally intended to present to Moo-hung, including a pouch filled with fragrant sachets. Though these trinkets held no significant monetary value, they were the fruits of my labor, and it would be a pity to discard them, hence my inclination to sell. Now that they have fallen into the prince's possession, I find myself torn between the desire to explain and the fear of incurring his displeasure. My silence became a testament to my bashfulness, and the princess, for the moment, spared me from her teasing. It was only after dining that I returned home, passing by my father's study, where I contemplated greeting him. Initially, I had hoped for her to fall into the water at the coming-of-age banquet, thereby establishing a connection with Moo-hung and solidifying their engagement. Yet now, it seems the prince harbors feelings for her, leaving me uncertain as to how to proceed. Should she marry into the Moo family, her status as the primary wife would be assured given our family's standing. However, if she were to follow the prince, she might only attain the position of a secondary consort. Moreover, it is likely that the prince will take additional brides in the future, and given my daughter's temperament, she may find herself at a disadvantage. I was taken aback by my father's words, and my mother's revelations pierced my heart. It was revealed that the incident of falling into the water in my past life had been orchestrated by my parents. Their profound love for me led them to devise a scheme to ensure Mu Heng's obligation to marry me, all for the sake of the family and my happiness. Thus, this is the foundation for Mu Heng's claims of my guile. Furthermore, it is evident to both of us that my daughter harbors feelings for Mu Heng, and she would undoubtedly refuse to marry the prince if that were to come to pass. Upon hearing this, I stepped boldly into the room, and my parents, startled by my expression, watched as I knelt before them. My mother's affection and my father's strategic planning moved me deeply. Yet I no longer held affection for Mu Heng, as his heart belonged to my cousin. I shared what I knew with my father, omitting the fact of my rebirth, and he sighed, alongside my mother, respecting my decision. The general's household is indeed a prestigious one, yet if a couple cannot share their hearts, they risk becoming adversaries. Before I knew it, Spring Festival had arrived, and after New Year's Day, it was customary for families to visit relatives and exchange greetings. Naturally, I accompanied my mother to my cousin's home. I had previously learned that Mu Heng had visited the day before, and thus, I hoped to avoid an encounter. However, in my cousin's garden, I unexpectedly came across Mu Heng. After such a long absence, he appeared to have lost considerable weight. He initiated friendly conversation and, sensing my deliberate avoidance, noted my absence from his usual company. I merely grew taller. Do not misconstrue my intentions, Major General. I attempted to walk away, but he barred my path. You used to call me Brother Mu Heng. Why this newfound formality? His gaze bore into me, unsettling me, reminiscent of the way he looked when intoxicated during our intimate moments. A chill coursed down my spine, and I found his demeanor intolerable. The past is the past. Back then, I was unaware of your affections for my cousin, but now that I see the truth, I must maintain my distance. As he advanced, I retreated, striving to preserve a respectful space between us. Who claimed I favored Qian? I merely appreciated the attention from her brother. If we were to weigh our affections, you and I would be the true match. Is this a confession? I perceive it as a manifestation of your frustration over the shift in your attitude towards me. I am no longer a lovesick young girl. I can discern your insincerity. Please, Major General, do not jest. My cousin harbors feelings for you as well. Should she hear your words, it would surely break her heart. Mu Heng quickened his pace towards me. And what of you? Would it bring you joy to hear that? And would you cease to evade me? His proximity sent me into a panic. I feared being discovered alone with him would attract scandal. In my haste, I stumbled and fell into the water. Mu Heng attempted to leap in to rescue me, but recalling my past life, where his embrace forced me into an unwanted marriage, I swiftly drew a hairpin to my throat. Do not approach. If you genuinely wish to save me, summon my maid. His entire demeanor froze, his eyes reflecting a hint of sorrow. After he turned and left, I lay upon the stones at the water's edge, awaiting my maid to pull me up. The pond at my aunt's residence was shallow. In my previous life, I had panicked and forgotten to stand. This time, I was determined not to repeat that mistake. The maid brought me a rope, which I grasped firmly, and with the assistance of 2 or 3 people, I was swiftly pulled to safety. My mother, frantic with worry, hurriedly placed me in a warm room, bathing me in hot water and dressing me in clean garments. Thankfully, Mu Heng, aware of my desire to avoid him, did not linger by the pond, and my fall went unnoticed by others. I fell ill again, confined to the house even through the Lantern Festival, while Mu Heng and my cousin took turns sending invitations for outings, all of which I declined. I remembered that in my previous life, while awaiting marriage, I had heard that Mu Heng would participate in the Lantern Riddle contest, with the prize being a pair of red agate earrings, perfect for a bride. I had quietly followed him, witnessing him share the answers with my cousin, so that she could claim the prize. She later boasted to me, saying, "How fortunate to have Brother Mu Heng. Anything I desire, he can provide." At the time, I was oblivious to the implications, but now I shudder at the memory. A mere pair of agate earrings, not particularly valuable, had once captured my interest, but now they held no allure. I instructed my maid to warm some wine. Gazing out the window at the bright moonlight, and in solitude, I gradually felt warmth returning. The next day, My maid entered bearing news that Mu Hung had sent something the previous night. Having fallen asleep early due to intoxication, I had yet to open it. My curiosity piqued. I discovered a small brocade box containing the agate earrings I had longed for in my past life. I resolved to return the gift. I have no need for it. After sending the item back, I did not dwell on the matter, as my impending role as a companion reader for the third princess had been confirmed, and I was to enter the palace the following day. I instructed my maid to prepare some gifts, which I personally delivered to the tutor who had just returned from the new year, listening intently to his advice regarding palace etiquette. As I stepped outside, snow began to fall again, and I spotted Mu Hung standing in the courtyard, clad in a silver fox cloak, awaiting my arrival. You withdrew from the clan school to avoid me? I shook my head, explaining that the princess had honored me with the role of companion reader, which I deemed a privilege. It would certainly enhance my prospects for marriage in the future. When did you become so self-serving? You once devoted yourself entirely to me, and now you contemplate marrying another. Mu Hung appeared somewhat flustered, his eyes reddening as he gazed at me intently. You and my cousin are the perfect pair. I do not wish to interfere in another's affections. Your previous protection of her should prevent any misunderstandings between us. My feelings for you are not mere misunderstandings. If you truly care for me, I can cease my interactions with my cousin. As soon as Mu Hung finished speaking, my cousin appeared behind him, her eyes glistening with tears that spilled like pearls from a broken string. Brother Mu Hung, did you not promise to cherish me for a lifetime?
Now,
what regard do you hold for me in light of your affection for my cousin? I watched as my cousin stepped toward Mu Hung, clutching his garment, demanding an explanation. Mu Hung chose silence, mirroring his previous treatment of me, employing coldness to leave me in despair. My unvoiced grievances gnawed away at my reason. When I desperately sought an outlet for my feelings, Mu Hung responded only with avoidance and silence. My cousin, deprived of an answer, was soon overtaken by distress and fainted. In a flurry, Mu Hung rushed to lift her from the snow. She was in a dire state. I insisted on taking her to find a doctor. I no longer wished to witness Mu Hang's hurried retreat. Their residence lay to the west, while I was headed east toward the palace, our paths diverging. Life in the palace was cautious. I was ever wary of missteps that might attract trouble. Fortunately, the princess's protection afforded me some peace in my quarters. Unlike my previous life, where Mu Hung had confined me to the home, I now enjoyed the company of many friends, engaging in poetry, merriment, and studying alongside the princess, leading a fulfilling and vibrant existence. It was not until the princess informed me that the prince was to select a consort that I was advised to prepare myself. I held no aspirations of forming a connection with the prince. My role as the princess's companion reader merely increased my opportunities for encounters with him. Since the incident with the mistaken bundle, the prince had acquired my embroidery, and I had refrained from sending him further gifts. Given my family's standing, I could only aspire to become a secondary consort, yet if I were to pursue such a path, I would aim for the primary position. Thus, I temporarily dismissed the notion of competing for his favor. The third princess appeared quite taken aback by my response. Believing that the bond between the crown prince and myself was already well established, merely awaiting a propitious moment, I aspired to partake in the civil service examination for women. Should I succeed, it would allow me to realize my ambitions. I recalled that in my previous life, turmoil would erupt along the borders in merely 6 months. Mu Hung would accompany his father to war, while the crown prince would grapple with the internal strife caused by the floods in Jiangnan. Have you considered that by participating in the examination, you might forfeit the opportunity to compete for the position of crown princess? As I nodded, following the princess's gaze, I was startled to find the crown prince standing behind me, having appeared unnoticed. I am not a tiger. Why are you so anxious, fearing I might devour you? After dismissing the third princess, the crown prince seated himself in a garden pavilion. I stood there quietly, apprehensive that he might take offense at my earlier words. The crown prince was no beast, but rather a future sage ruler who would not harm me. I feigned composure, yet as soon as I uttered my thoughts, he interjected, "No, I wish to devour you." I was momentarily taken aback, meeting his profound gaze. I was merely jesting. Your astonishment is quite amusing. His smile was radiant, his long fingers delicately holding a booklet that I had inadvertently left with the princess days prior. Did you compose this? I nodded. It contained my treatise on the floods in Jiangnan, though it was not yet polished. He returned the booklet to me, gently patting my shoulder. Pursue your aspirations. I shall be your support. As I gazed upon the Crown Prince's striking features, I noticed how he stood like a grand tree, shielding me from the harsh sunlight, casting a halo of light around him. On the day of his selection of concubines, I entered the inner hall for the women's civil service examination, penning my thoroughly refined treatise on flood management, ultimately securing the top position. The Emperor personally appointed me as a female official, granting me the privilege to traverse the palace. Mu Heng sought a private audience, sending me 3 invitations. Aware of his impending departure to the frontier, I felt obliged to comply. I had not anticipated that the girl who once circled around me would now be a female official. However, being a woman came with numerous restrictions, rendering the prospect of marriage and raising children more tangible. Mu Heng's gaze was fervent, yet his words aimed to undermine me. Men aspire to the world. Women can equally hold their own. The Empress Dowager established female officials in the hope that women could also serve the nation.
How could you look down upon them?
That was not my intention. I merely wished to convey that I am heading to the frontier. Before I depart, my mother desires for me to wed, and the lady I cherish in my heart has always been you. I let out a cold laugh, realizing Mu Heng had not yet relinquished hope. But my husband in this life shall never be you. Mu Heng appeared disheartened, clenching his fists within his sleeves, an action I observed.
Why?
His confusion stemmed from my sudden clarity, recalling the life I had wasted on him in my previous existence. I had no desire to respond. Female officials must marry by the age of 25. Should I return safely, I hope you grant me a chance. Life is too fleeting to be shackled by trivial affections. Since we are fated to be apart, we ought to forget one another in the vastness of the world. Your repeated attempts to seek me are merely a manifestation of your unwillingness to accept this reality. Once, in the throes of youthful infatuation, I harbored feelings for you, and my cousin equally admired you. You lingered between 2 women. Did you not secretly revel in it? I observed his complexion dimming with each passing moment as he attempted to explain himself. No need to elaborate. Your current demeanor disappoints me. This is the final time. I turned to leave, not long after learning of Mu Heng's marriage to my cousin. Upon returning home, I expressed my sentiments to my mother, who shared her reflections on the matter. It turned out that after visiting me, Mu Heng had succumbed to inebriation, during which my cousin had cunningly taken advantage of his stupor, lying beside him in disarray, leading to their hastily arranged marriage. As the edict for his military campaign had been issued, the wedding was exceedingly simple, with a floral sedan chair delivered to Mu's residence, while Mu Heng departed with the army. 3 years later, at the age of 20, the Crown Prince had selected several secondary consorts, but had yet to finalize his choice for the Crown Princess. The princess informed me that the Crown Prince awaited me, yet I merely smiled and shook my head. Clinging to the affections of men pales in comparison to wielding power. I combined my treatise with foreknowledge of significant events from my past life, assisting the Crown Prince in resolving various dilemmas, even garnering favor in the presence of the Emperor. Through my efforts, the status of female officials was no longer a mere facade. I could finally stand in the court, akin to my father. However, I remained in the outer hall, far from the zenith of power. During this time, Mu Heng returned victorious, clad in gleaming armor, furrowing his brow at the sight of my official attire. A hen crowing at dawn is an ill omen. How dare you enter the hall? Mu Heng and I became adversaries, continuously clashing in the court, as if we had become sworn enemies. In my 25th year, I neared the age of relinquishment, anxiety gnawing at my heart. Mu Heng vehemently opposed my political views, while the Emperor fell gravely ill. Ordinarily, the Crown Prince would oversee the state affairs. Yet the Emperor appointed the 5th Prince to assist in governance. I sensed a whiff of conspiracy and sought the 3rd Princess and the Crown Prince for sound strategies. However, as I stepped outside, I was halted by my cousin, who demanded to see me. After years apart, she appeared considerably haggard, though merely in her 20s. Strands of white graced her temples. Mu Heng is plotting treachery. You must prepare. Astonishment crossed my face at her directness. Could this be Mu Heng's test? What nonsense are you spouting? My eyes narrowed, assessing her for signs of panic, yet she remained resolute. Mu Heng loves you. He has kept me confined at home. This time, I wish for you to help me obtain a divorce. How did you manage to escape? I had waited for him for so long. Each time we were together, he called out your name. I loathed you, but I loathed him even more. If you could facilitate my divorce, I would be willing to do anything. I refrained from immediately giving my response, instead discreetly arranging for her departure. Before long, Mu-hung began searching for my cousin's whereabouts, even arriving at my residence. Cousin has been here, but she has left. She asked me to procure a divorce decree for her. I relayed the truth.
Noten mujeres composed de minor.
I do intend to support the fifth prince, but only if you are willing to resign and marry, renouncing all involvement in court matters. I shall continue to be loyal to you. So, after all these years of contention in the court, it was merely to prevent me from holding an official position? In Mu-heng's eyes, he held women in disdain, desiring us to be mere parasites. This world belongs to men. Your place is to manage the inner quarters. Support your husband and bear children. I wished to ignore him, yet Mu-heng suddenly lashed out, rendering me unconscious. I awoke to the acrid scent of medicine, finding Mu-heng embroiled in a scuffle with the crown prince's secret guards who were covertly protecting me, while the maidens shielded me nearby. In my residence, Mu-heng audaciously sought to tarnish my purity, an utterly outrageous act. Mu-heng glared at me with resentment as I handed him over to the crown prince. Soon, the matter of Mu-heng's treachery was thoroughly purged. As someone reborn, assisting the crown prince in preemptive measures had long been my strategy. No matter how much Mu-heng resented it, he could only watch as I aided the crown prince in ascending to power, receiving the homage of the officials. In my 25th year, I became the emperor's appointed female chancellor, while Mu-heng, due to his family's immunity from capital punishment, was confined to his home. The courtyard that had once ensnared me in my previous life was now a taste of retribution for Mu-heng. My cousin sought a divorce decree from me, but I advised her to learn to be gentle and virtuous. The emperor's edict stated that she and Mu-heng were a match made in heaven, and could not be separated. The dilapidated residence of the National Protector General often echoed with my cousin's frantic cries, while Mu-heng could not resist resorting to violence, leaving her bruised and battered. I recalled how, in my previous life, she had once boasted to me that even as the wife of a general, she could not retain her husband. Now, even in her desire to escape Mu-heng, that possibility had vanished. Mu-heng harbored hatred towards me, blaming my cousin for her betrayal. One snowy morning, they each plunged a dagger into the other, sealing their fates. The blood stained the courtyard crimson, while my cousin laughed until her voice was hoarse, and then, alongside Mu-heng, they departed this world with unclosed eyes. The emperor silently passed the memorial to me, seated beside me, propping his chin on one hand, gazing at me intently. I felt uneasy under his scrutiny. How long would His Majesty continue to watch me? The future Empress is yet to be determined until you express your willingness to marry me. I meticulously organized the memorials into categories and silently ground the cinnabar into a thick paste, presenting the imperial brush to the emperor. It is not yet the time for romance. Your Majesty should focus on governance. 5 fleeting years passed in the blink of an eye, and the third princess's children had reached the age of 10. On the second day after I stepped down as chancellor, she knocked on my door, forcibly dragging me from my warm bed. Others may not understand your intentions, but I do. Years ago, when you fell into icy water and were injured, rendering you unable to conceive, you turned a blind eye to your love for the emperor, repeatedly delaying in hopes he would turn his affections elsewhere.
Now,
open your eyes and behold this tranquil realm. My brother remains chaste for you, childless at your feet. If you possessed even a shred of conscience, you ought not to sleep so soundly. After enduring hardships for over a decade, I finally hoped for a respite, yet the third princess shook me awake.
Furu.
My brother has granted you the opportunity to realize your ambitions. Is it not time for you to settle your heart? The third princess pressed me to drink copiously, and I stumbled into the palace, carrying a bundle. In the imperial study, the steward, witnessing my late-night arrival, hurried to report, while the emperor donned the deep blue dragon robe reminiscent of years past. I swayed as I entered, grasping the emperor's arm, insisting, "Follow me. I am not drunk." As he opened his mouth to speak, I silenced him with my hand, saying, "Do not utter a word. Your gaze tells me all I need to know." After years of companionship, the nervousness of our first meeting had long dissipated. I urged the emperor to sit, handing him the bundle. "Change into this. I made it myself." He unwrapped the bundle to reveal a complete set of nightwear. Surprise flickered in his eyes, for it had been a decade since I had crafted anything for him. As he donned the garments, I narrowed my eyes slightly, guiding him step by step toward the bed. "Rower, do you know what you are doing?" I remained silent, merely twirling my finger around the sash he had just tied, clumsily revealing his upper body before pushing him onto the dragon bed. I am not drunk. I am fully aware of my actions. That night, my title transformed from subject to consort, and the Emperor's gaze deepened as he reciprocated my kiss with fervor. A night of fragrant intimacy unfolded, leading to a profound exchange between us. The following morning, during court, the Emperor appeared invigorated, while I languished in the harem, aching all over. My ascension to Empress faced no hindrance, and our children arrived one after another. The first two were sons, but when it came time for a daughter, the Emperor forbade me from bearing any more. Reflecting on my past life, I tightly grasped the Emperor's hand. Originally, I had envisioned a life free from marriage and motherhood, yet someone illuminated my moonlit path. In the epilogue, the Empress's tale. Before I ascended to the throne, I inadvertently overheard a conversation between the Emperor and the court officials. "Your Majesty, do not forsake the realm for a mere woman. The imbalance of yin and yang, with a hen crowing at dawn, is a dire omen." I was already 30, nearing the age at which I had perished in my previous life, and my predictions had begun to skew, leaving me anxious and unsettled. The Emperor, maintaining a calm tone, reassured the officials that he would manage me well. Eventually, I was destined to become the Empress and bear children. In that moment, I felt a pang of betrayal. Indeed, in this patriarchal society, how could I single-handedly effect change? To my colleagues, I was merely a woman playing house with the Emperor, inevitably returning to the harem. Having lived through it once, the thought of being confined beneath the heavens made me restless, prompting me to spend a night drinking with a third princess. Unlike in my youth, my tolerance for alcohol had significantly increased, and I found clarity in inebriation. The third princess grasped my hand. We both understood that our ideals revolved around women possessing the right to freedom. Had it not been for a careless maid, my embroidered pieces and shoes intended for sale to aid the impoverished would not have been gifted to the crown prince. Bittersweetness surged within me, yet I could not suppress a smile. At that time, I merely thought you suited my brother, employing subtle schemes, yet after all these years, you must have realized that my brother loves you. The year you chose your female officials, he selected 2 concubines. As the years passed, one met her demise through her own folly, while the other remained steadfast in her devotion to you. He is nearly drowned by the spittle of the officials, yet has never wavered in taking more women into the palace. Alas, this world is harsh towards women. We must strategize for the long term. It was on that very night that I resolved to pursue a circuitous path toward women's liberation. While I tendered my resignation to the Emperor, I also personally crafted nightwear, marking my first step in winning his favor. The third princess assisted me in performing a play of unspoken affections, feigning a return home to accompany her husband. Since I could not independently forge a path for women's independence, I would cultivate more women from within, igniting a fierce blaze. In my first month as Empress, my beloved concubine passed away, and the Emperor and I honored her memory by facilitating the establishment of girls' schools throughout the realm. Women must be literate and enlightened, unbound by the antiquated thoughts of men. I aimed not only for noble women but also for commoners to possess the capability to strive for advancement. In my inaugural year as Empress, I conceived my first child while successfully placing the first wave of female officials in various departments of the capital. When officials sought to obstruct my path, they found that no remarkable candidates emerged for the selection of female officials following my tenure. This was the Emperor's first child. He utilized the excuse of my pregnancy to reject their objections, thus allowing the seeds of female governance to finally bear fruit. I had longed for a daughter, yet outwardly, I insisted to the Emperor that I desired a son, for in this dynasty, men are the sovereigns of power. The first was a son, the second, yet another son. As I grew older, the physician warned that another pregnancy would be perilous. Yet I subtly suggested to the Emperor that having a daughter would be even better. At last, I bore a daughter, but it was a life-threatening ordeal. I witnessed the Emperor weep for me, vowing never to allow me to bear another child. It seemed he truly loved me. I awaited the daughter I had yearned for, feigning indifference as I watched the Emperor dote upon her. Yet I was even more stringent with her than with the sons. At the age of 45, The former concubine of the crown prince finally returned to court as an official. We had outlasted a cadre of old officials, injecting new blood into the court, and she ascended to become the second female chancellor. This time, the three of us gathered at the third princess's residence, drinking to the point of tears. No one knew how arduous the years had been for us. The concubine remarked, "Men will only hinder my ascent. I shall leave behind children." The third princess declared, "Men may have multiple wives. I too shall seek romance." They spoke in jest, while I simply smiled softly, for what I desired was a world ruled by women. In the year I turned 55, the emperor fell gravely ill. I remained by his side, presenting the succession edict I had long prepared. "Your Majesty, please seal it. I believe the future will be splendid." From a young age, I instilled military strategy in my two sons while meticulously instructing my daughter in the nuances of political balance. The emperor was aware of this and found himself at a loss. "Rower, your ambitions are truly vast. I cannot discern whether it is right or wrong." I caressed the emperor's frail, yellowed face, smiling gently. "Do you love me?" As he had countless times over the years, his answer was resolute. "Then trust me. This prosperous era will endure through the generations, and our daughter will excel beyond the men. I have one condition." The emperor's eyes grew cloudy, glinting with fragmented light. "The road to the underworld is lonely. Will you accompany me, Ro?" I nodded. "I will journey alongside you. The emperor has passed away, and in accordance with his last edict, the princess is to be elevated as the crown princess, destined to inherit the throne, while I willingly choose to accompany him in death." Upon hearing this news, the third princess and the concubine nearly succumbed to madness, desperate to devise a means to save me. I reassured them that the emperor had laid contingency plans if the princess were to ascend the throne smoothly. My demise was inevitable.
But why?
"Does not your brother love you dearly? How could he bear to lose you?" they implored. I offered a bitter smile, for it is precisely because of that profound love that we must depart together. With a white silk ribbon hanging from the beam, I approached my fate with serenity. My daughter was held back outside, while my two sons vowed to safeguard their sister. At the moment the palace doors closed, I felt my feet leave the ground, and a wave of agony surged through my body. In that instant, I found liberation from my life, and countless women at last gained their voices, ready to spread their wings and soar. The narrative concludes here. Thank you for listening, and until we meet again in the next tale.